Welcome back, Jason. Financing.
Okay.
Talk to me.
We're gonna brush up on the other ones. So we've got the due diligence, financing, appraisal.
Okay.
In deadlines, financing and appraisals together. But in the contract they're separate. So if
Whoa, slow down for a minute. You just left me. And in the due diligence, they're together. In the contract, the REPSI.
in the deadline part of it, you have 4 deadlines: seller disclosures, due diligence, financing, settlement.
Okay.
In the contract,
The REPSI.
in the REPSI, you've got seller disclosures, due diligence, financing, appraisal, settlement.
Interesting. They split them up.
Yeah, so financing, appraisal is deadline. It's kind of together because they should happen pretty close together. You get the appraisal back, and does financing work? Let's do this. So, really quick, we're going to cover what happens if your buyer wants to back out.
Okay.
So, for the due diligence, everything needs to be done in writing, right? This is written. So, you could send an addendum saying, hey, we're whatever. That's writing. You could put it in an email. That's writing. You can send a text. That's writing.
Oh. Okay.
Right? Remember that you could write them a letter. You could send a telegraph. But this is something that if push comes to shove, you want to document. So I really recommend emails.
Facebook Messenger.
Yeah. Writing, right? Writing.
Okay.
Writing. So emails are great. And then there's cancellation of REPSI. You can send over, right? If you cancel before the deadline, for what the deadline is, the buyer gets the earnest money back. The real estate purchase contract in the state of Utah protects the buyer.
I'm gathering that this last segment we did where the buyer can close almost all the way up to the end of the road. That sucks for the seller.
Yeah, so when you're writing up this contract to the seller, or you get an offer, because you don't write it up, wow. If you get a written offer and their financing appraisal deadline is 1 day before the settlement deadline, you might say, hey, what's going on? Like, you realize that your $20,000 earnest money is basically useless because you can back out.
It looks good, but it's meaningless. Yeah. Yes.
So, in the financing, there's some other stuff. So, like, there's a right to cancel before the financing and appraisal deadline, where it says, there go my papers. So, if applicable, cancel REPSI by earnest money deposit shall be released. Skip a line. If applicable, cancel the REPSI by providing written notice to seller no later than the financing appraisal deadline, referenced in section 24C, whereupon this much of the buyer's earnest money shall be released to the seller without requirement of further authorization from the buyer. So, in this section, you can say, if we get to a certain point, my earnest money goes non-refundable. Okay? And that is the financing and appraisal deadline. Okay?
Okay, so that could be a way to make your offer look a little stronger, is if you say, hey, if we get past this date, you get to keep at least some of the earnest money.
And the remainder of the buyer's earnest money shall be released to the buyer without... I've read that wrong.
And again, I'm thinking, it says in writing, this goes back to the conversation we just had, where in writing could be a text.
Yeah.
That's convenient. Because, if I'm the agent and you decide to back out on a contract, I could just send a text to the other side and say, hey, we're out, rather than go back to the office and try to write up something official.
So yeah, and it can get, the time is of the essence. Like with lending, if I have a document signed before midnight, it happened that day. I have my closing disclosure, my loan estimate, my initial loan disclosures happens from midnight to midnight, the day.
Okay, so the day ends at midnight rather than
For
at 5
me,
o'clock.
For a lender.
For you, the lender.
But as a real estate agent, you have right in here where it says section. We're jumping ahead. Anyway, it's 5 o'clock unless it's otherwise specified, right? So okay, so
So for everybody else, it's 5 o'clock. For you, because Jason's up all the time, and his only life is
that's all I do.
Is
money.
is being the money guy. So you can do whatever to him until 11:59:59.
Yeah, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so with this, you can make earnest money go hard, and then the next section you can put additional earnest money down. But here's the catch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the buyer's right to cancel after the financing and appraisal deadline, okay, this is important. So if they fail to obtain the loan, they can cancel. They will not be obligated to buy the property, and this is how it works out. Okay, earnest money can be released to the seller. Okay, this is a remedy. So if the seller agrees to accept, as the seller's exclusive remedy, they keep the earnest money. Okay? Buyer and seller agree that the liquid damages would be difficult and impractical to calculate, and the earnest money deposit or deposits, if applicable, is fair and reasonable estimate of the seller's damages in event that the buyer fails to obtain the loan.
Does this prevent the seller from being able to enforce the contract's execution?
There's other things. So if they go into default, which, watch the real estate purchase contract class,
Mm-hmm.
right? There are other remedies for the seller, buyer default, and for the seller. But in this section, say if we fail to perform, you keep the earnest money. That's what the earnest money is mostly for, right? So we want to buy the house. We want to buy the house. This is bad. This is how much skin we will put in the game. As long as everything goes according to the contract, we're going to buy the house. If it doesn't, you can keep this much money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So, hey, we're not going to buy it. Sorry about that. Okay, now remember, this doesn't overlap the seller's disclosures, due diligence. This is just the financing part of it. Like, it doesn't appraise for it. They back out before appraisal, right? They back out after financing. They say, we're so sorry, keep our earnest money.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's interesting, if the sellers back out, there's different things. So, and once again, well, I'll cover it here. So, the sellers can double up on the earnest money,
Mm-hmm.
or the buyers can sue and enforce the contract, right? So, there's heavier conditions on the seller to sell than the buyer to buy.
Okay.
So there's your financing condition. So either there's no financing required or there is,
Mm-hmm.
and it's conditional, and these are the deadlines, and we'll give more earnest money to keep things going if need be. And then, so you notice that the section to keep additional earnest money comes before getting earnest money back. So, like, you'll keep this regardless of anything, and then there's the other section. If we go past the deadline, you'll keep all of it.
That section basically says that if we go past, you can. I mean, the default is that the buyer gets all their money back. But in that section, it actually allows the ability to change that if both sides agree to it.
Right. Yeah, well, the buyers are right in the offer, so they would elect to put down non-refundable earnest money.
Yes. And my first thought is, why in the world would they do that? But my second thought is, I know why they'd want to do that. They want to write an offer that looks better to the seller. And
Yeah.
in this market, where homes are flying off the shelf, and you put up a $300,000 home, and tomorrow you got 12 offers, this would be a way to make your offer look better.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the most attractive offer is like your cash offer, right? They don't need to go through financing. But then after that, like, how much earnest money? Because you have things like, you may or may not have a house that you're buying and you need to sell this one first.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a house, that you don't have to sell this house to get the next one. You have earnest money on the line. You're buying a house, I'm buying a house, I fail.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it written before where the middle person, earnest money went hard before the earnest money on their house went hard. So they lost their buyer, they lost the house they were buying, and they lost their earnest money, and they had to give their earnest money back.
That's painful.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I've seen a scenario where it was a for sale by owner, where buyer gave seller a check and then buyer comes back and says, oh, we lost our job, we need to cancel, give us our money back. Seller said no. And that gets difficult because there is no reps either.
Oh, wow. There's no agents?
Yeah.
No. Yeah. That's interesting. One of my favorite transactions ever is I had a no agent situation, and I had a handwritten contract with a pencil on a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper.
We gonna buy this home.
Yeah.
The red one.
We'll buy this. It had the address, had everything I needed. Address, price, but that was it. We're buying the house. Anyway.
That's right.
So if, as a licensed real estate agent, you need to use the current Utah real estate purchase contract. If there's no agents involved, then it's just whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah, I guess that's welcome to the jungle.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of times people don't understand how important real estate agents are or what they can do. This is a really good way to show why they should use an agent, why this document exists, and possibly tell them stories about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's a good part of a, not a listing contract, but, a discussion with buyers, with clients, as to what can go wrong when.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alrighty, are we done with this segment?
Yeah, that covers it.
And what's coming up next?
Next, we're actually going into the legislative administrative rules. No, I lied. We're going to an acceptance and addenda. I'm sorry, so sorry, I almost skipped a whole section.
Acceptance and addenda.
Yeah, and that'll wrap it up for...
Okay. That's next.
Okay.